Greetings, I'm your host, Jason Miles, here for another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel, welcome. So glad to have you here. If you are a returning listener, subscriber, or one of our very valued patrons, so glad to have you back. Tomorrow morning, we'll be doing another episode of What Fresh Hell, our show where Deep State Cuba lays out the geopolitical situation with our current war in Iran and more. You can check Cuba out on Left Reckoning, where he was a guest earlier today to show that audience what we do here on TIR. What Fresh Hell will start at 6 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. At 6 p.m. Pacific, we'll be broadcasting at our normal time, but we'll be launching another new show as we'll be joined with metalcore legend Doc Coyle, and we'll take a dive into the void and discuss more than just music and hear his take on the current state of affairs. After the main show tonight, MT will be joining me in the Champagne Room to engage in a little TIR VIP velvet rope nonsense. If you're a patron or paid YouTube subscriber, those links should be up for you to join us in the Champagne Room. Quick reminder that TIR is listener funded. And if you appreciate the work we do here and you'd like to join us for our movie nights, which we are doing this week, Thursday night after the main show, and Champagne Rooms, well, there's a couple of easy ways. You can become a patron or a paid YouTube subscriber. Your donation makes sure that TIR can continue to stay on air, bringing you programs such as this. $3 a month or a one-time payment of $30 for the year is all it takes. Trust me, it is worth it. Now, let's have a fun discussion about environmental activists. This is my environmental activist outfit, by the way. Don't laugh. It's fucked up.
We're coming for you, nigga.
That's what the environmental activists say when I say that. Hard R. As a Gen Xer born in the late 70s and coming of age in the 80s, I was heavily influenced by the Cold War propaganda that was targeted at my particular age demographic. I grew up devouring this jingoistic content in the form of movies and cartoons, and the coked out decision-making powers in youth marketing divisions had no problem selling children adult dreams of American exceptional badassery. G.I. Joe being the most obvious and well-known. The Joes fought not against the Soviet Red Army, but against a rather questionably well-funded terrorist organization called Cobra. That would be a stand-in for communist foes. But who went to war with G.I. Joe after the fall of communism? Who would be the existential threat to American democracy? Does anyone remember? Does anyone remember who G.I. Joe's enemy was after the fall of the Soviet Union? No? Simple. They became a force against eco-terrorism. True story. While Cobra still remained a persistent thorn in the side of the Joes, the evil organization would enlist the help of a former CEO of a dangerous corporation who was deformed by his own toxic chemicals, yet he blamed environmental activists for his condition. Cesspool, as he was known, would join Cobra as their chief environmental officer. True story. G.I. Joe was not alone in this pivot to the environment in the 90s. Captain Planet found great success in the 90s, and even the gruesome independent film series The Toxic Avenger would get an animated children's cartoon as well. It would be easy for one to believe that enemy number one for the United States government would be corporate malfeasance that's polluting the environment, not the people trying to save the planet. But I wouldn't be talking to you right now had we all just followed the lead of G.I. Joe in the first place. An actual environmentalist movement had been building for some time, since the 60s, and by 1970 we would have our first Earth Day. Recognition is not enough to stop the clearing of old growth forests and the protection of lands not encumbered by modernization. Radical groups started to form to prevent the further degradation of planet Earth. And this is where our story begins. These radical movements that were mostly leaderless and horizontal in nature would go on to inflict property damage, but property damage requires no human cost. So why, if saving the planet became so important, were these activists on the FBI's most wanted list? Why was there a green scare in the 2000s that sent many of these activists to prison for long stretches, all because they vandalized some buildings and freed some animals. What was the government so afraid of? Also, what happened to the people in the movement following these prison stints? Did they retreat to academia and the nonprofit world, like what happened after the civil rights movement? In our guest's latest book, No Option But Sabotage, poses some important questions about how far one is willing to go to protect something they understand is sacred. But what is your fight really accomplishing if it isn't tied to a more broad movement that encompasses a vast heterodox group? From the book, No Option But Sabotage. Two key questions first drew me to the radical environmental movement, and they run through this book. First, what happened to the radical environmental movement during the ELF era, 1995 to 2008? That would be Earth Liberation Front, for those that know what ELF stands for. Why did activists turn toward sabotage and property destruction, actions that led the FBI to declare the movement the #1 domestic terror threat after 9/11? And why, by the end of the decade, 2010, why had this once prominent movement seemingly gone silent? What happened? Second, given the escalating threat from climate change, why haven't we seen a resurgence of sabotage and property destruction to match the urgency of the movement? What's behind the calculus of present-day activists? Is sabotage considered ineffective? Are state repression and surveillance too powerful, or is a resurgence coming? These questions are not just central to understanding the radical environmental movement, they are also at the heart of my own field of study, political violence. Why do people in social movements challenge the status quo? When do grievances become powerful enough and shape emerging movements? Political opportunity also matters. When does a decline in repression, division among elites, or shifts in public opinion create fertile ground for a movement to grow? The question of repression is crucial. How do governments respond to radical movements with surveillance, informants, and prosecutions? Why does repression sometimes destroy a movement, while at other times it backfires and it makes the movement even stronger? Finally, how should movements organize, and which tactics should they choose? Should activists seek to build a broad-based movement, or is a small cadre, a vanguard, more effective at disruption and inflicting costs upon targets? Relatedly, are radical tactics like property destruction and violence always counterproductive? Or can they push the public towards greater support for movement demands? Yet one more question sits at the heart of this book and the radical environmental movement itself. How far should activists go to protect the planet? Activists have wrestled with this question for decades. This book traces how radical environmentalism surged, collapsed, and may rise again in an era of climate crisis and renewed repression. It shows how subcultures, state crackdowns, and shifting activist networks shaped the movement, and how those same forces may shape activists going forward. Throughout the book, we will hear from both activists and experts. Their stories and reflections offer insight into the movement's past, present, and future, from founding members to the original Earth First, to green anarchists active in the Pacific Northwest, to current climate justice activists. These voices show a movement that is still wrestling with the title of this book, Is There No Option But Sabotage? Before I bring in our guest, let me bring in my co-host. She is a bit of an environmentalist herself, as I was telling our guest off air. She is currently wearing ethically grown hemp as we speak. Please welcome MToussaint.
Hello. I don't have anything snappy to say. For once.
For once?
Yeah. Well,
Gotcha.
Let's just get cracking. Let's bring in our brand new mulatto friend.
Please welcome Thomas Zeitzoff.
Y'all killing me. Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, he's not ready for that.
Well, I mistakenly called Thomas the N-word earlier. So,
oh my God. All right.
I was mistaken.
That made me laugh really hard.
Sometimes you get it wrong. And,
Yes.
There should, if you call the wrong person the N-word with an A, it's just as offensive as if you use a hard R. We found that out today.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I'm very excited to be here. Was not ready for all this, but I'm pumped. Thank you guys for having me.
Poor Thomas got sent to me by a serious man. Scott Parkin is like covering his face right now. I'm like, God damn, I'm never sending anyone to Jason ever again.
No, yeah. But it was Scott, our good mutual friend. Give him a shout out to him and Bob as well.
Oh, I have to, and I have to give a shout out to MT for putting Scott on my radar. So shout out to MT.
Sparky.
Thomas, first things first, we should probably lay out who we're talking about when we discuss this movement and what years we're talking about. For, I guess, Earth First is like the first big radical movement.
Yeah. I mean, so like I'll just say it like from the top is that I come to this as an outsider. So I study political violence outside the U.S. So I've done a lot of work: Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, Turkey, Mexico, Georgia, the country. And I think, came to this as something that was, interesting, like with, as you were saying, like how a bunch of people didn't like essentially harm anybody. How are they labeled eco-terrorists? But I think one of the history, as you were saying, with Earth First is pretty fascinating, because I think a lot of times when we think about environmentalists, we think of it's like lefties, it's liberals, it's in this house, we believe in yada, yada, yada. And the early, they got the sign. And in the early Earth First folks were like, I mean, rednecks for wilderness, like Stetson hats. I mean, a lot of the people I could tell, like if somebody's like, when I was interviewing them, if they said, I'm not an environmentalist, I'm a conservationist, I was like, oh, okay. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so it's like this kind of like wilderness, like protect, like sort of disaffected members of the Sierra Club, Friends of the Earth. And they basically start this kind of countercultural movement, like countercultures, but like on the tail end of like the 70s, early 80s. And they start basically saying like, hey, we need to do something because there's not being done enough to protect wilderness. And that's where like Earth First comes in. It's like, this kind of low level sort of sabotage. And then and that's like the end. And then we transition. And then from these folks, we, get, this kind of punk scene, this anarchist spirit starts to come in. The old Earth First start to become aghast because they're like, oh my gosh, right, our like wilderness survival, group that we love, that's all about, protecting wilderness and doesn't care about human problems. It's being invaded by anarchists, leftists, and urban folks. And that's the Earth Liberation Front era. And that's like, I think, the part that you and I, you have some thoughts on, I think. Yeah. So.
Those were inside thoughts. When you're writing about the early Earth First movement, they almost seem like eco-fascists, more akin to the people that we'll see in 2014 with Clive and Bundy with the standoff. It feels a little like that from what I'm reading. Am I reading too much into that?
I think there were some, I would say there were some, I wouldn't call them like eco-fascists. I think of like Peyton Gendron and some of the people who like really are like straight up like fascist, and that they want to, bring down, they want to basically close all borders, eliminate all non-white people and stuff. These people would be like, Dave Foreman, like, I think they were misanthropic would be one way, race, xenophobic. I mean, there's also like, I think that like dirty secret is that a lot of these, folks, they come out of this weird, Paul Ehrlich's The Population Bomb, this concerns about overpopulation. And I think one of the things that is true, right, is that most, like, that was like a question, like a scientific question. But for the most part, it wasn't like too many, we're concerned about too many people in the planet. It was usually, it ended up being too many of certain kinds of people, right? And that's where like the really like ugly stuff within Earth First happened. And there were debates, right? And I think what ended up happening is like the people who said, hey, wilderness is not a great, way to sort of create an umbrella movement. We need to care more about social problems, because social problems are also environmental problems. Those folks, like, who are known as the social ecologists, and you get Murray Bookchin, right, and his folks, right, they kind of went out. But there were some like kind of like ugly impulses in Earth First. And I think the thing that always surprised me is that, like, you know, John Tanton founded, you know, the Tanton Network, and he was like a Sierra Club person. He was involved in zero population growth, and he goes on, right, to found Center for Immigration Studies, Foundation of Americans for Immigration Reform, all of these like really anti-immigrant, like ugly groups, and that's how we get Stephen Miller, right? So I think people
That was
forget.
crazy. That was crazy. You said that. TIR, do you want to follow up with anything?
I've been kind of struggling with what to ask you. So as a person who was sort of involved in environmentalism and the environmental movement.
Monkey wrencher.
What?
Nothing. Keep on. Sorry.
Yeah, I will. I've known a lot of people that I've networked with and blah, blah, blah. And I would say pretty much none of them are mainly focused on environmentalism anymore. And I was really trying to hold out. And I was really trying to be that person who held on. But I don't know if you know this. I am Black. Some people don't know, I guess. And I found it particularly difficult. So I sort of understood when a lot of the Black environmentalists I was around stopped doing it, I guess. But then I sort of wonder, is environmentalism kind of nothing? Is there nothing to really hold on to for that long?
Ooh.
What do you think?
I mean, so MToussaint's like coming from the top rope with I think an important question. And like, I think the point that you made is something that I do think like people struggle within, you know, what they would say like climate activists or other folks. Like if you can only get like 50 people out for a climate movement march, but you can get, you know, 1,000 people out for Gaza or Black Lives Matter, right? Is that a bad thing for the movement, right? Is it, you know, I don't know, right? That's, I think, an open question, but I do think like, you know, there is the argument that some people made is that if you do care deeply about the environment, sometimes people will say, and I had like an old Earth First who said, like, look, you know, I think all these struggles matter, but is it bad if we have people who care about the environment and care deeply about natural spaces and protecting our planet? Like, is that somebody that has, quote, bad politics, right? Is that what people in the movement want to have? And I think that's a deeper question, right? And that's a question that I think the movement has to grapple with. I mean, to say nothing of like, what does a climate movement look like, you know, in 2026 in Trump's America? That's a big question, right? Like, what are we doing? So I don't know. I mean, I do think one thing that that coming back to like the Earth First folks is there was this idea, and like you can, you know, there are a lot of interesting things like forest names and other things in the old Earth First journals, but there was like this, you know, kind of quasi-spiritual part of the environment, that it was like something sacred, and that, you know, sociologists would call it almost like kind of a new religious movement. I mean, that's what like Bron Taylor, like the academic, would sort of talk about, like the sacred green spaces. And there are, you know, drawbacks to that, but one of the non-drawbacks is then you get people who are willing to, you know, get political or sort of are willing to sacrifice for a cause that they believe in. So I think that there's trade-offs, right, that come with the intersectionality approach, right? There's a lot of good things, right? Is that recognizing that, you know, we can't separate, you know, climate problems from economic problems, from racist problems, all these other things. But it also does, you know, say, what is the environmental movement? As you were saying, is it nothing right now? And I don't know.
Well, isn't that what you were talking about with the original Earth Firsters, where it's kind of like you get these new people coming in and they're like, there's this intersection where capitalism and wait, hold it right there a minute. The problem, we just don't want Mexicans in the forest.
In the forest, specifically.
Keep them in your cities, your heathen, dirt-filled cesspools.
Okay.
But I want to hunt and I want to walk around naked in the forest. And I can't do it if there's a bunch of niggers. Latinos. Sorry. Is that better? Is that what it was kind of like? He put the mute on so his family didn't hear.
No, I mean, I think there were people obviously that had those feelings, but I also think, from that era, right, of the Earth First era, I do think, I'm trying to keep it straight, but I do think that there were people like who actually were concerned about like overpopulation, but there was this like darker undercurrent. And I think one of the things that is true, right, is, I mean, you read like Madison Grant, right, we're going back to the early 20th century, like the founder of national parks, right, Bronx Zoo, right, all of, he wrote the Immigrant Exclusion Act, and he wrote a book, The Passing of the Great Race, that is literally, it was one of Hitler's favorite books, and it is verbatim Great Replacement theory almost, right? So there is this really yucky underbelly, and something that like I think is almost like a side note in the book because it hasn't happened yet, but I think it will happen, is like what happens when the right wing finds climate and the environment. And like there is nothing inherently lefty about the environment, and there actually are some pretty terrible arguments and misanthropic arguments that can be twisted in all sorts of ways. Like you were saying, is like Fortress America, pull up the drawbridge, like we could keep our homeland pure, keep our nature pure, keep our bloodlines pure. It can really easily get twisted.
I worked with some of those people in North Dakota.
Yeah.
The stay off my landers is what I call them.
Yeah.
Very, very nice people. Just stay off their land. TIR, do you want to get on someone's land right now?
There was a passage in the book where you quoted someone white, and they were referring to white people as Native Americans. Creepy. So the whole thing about going to the forest in the Pacific Northwest and being seduced by the forest and all of that sort of thing. And you talk about the history of Oregon as well, as they tried to make it a white state.
Yep.
And it was until 1926, I think you said.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of ideas that come out of that area that have to do with purity. Mm-hmm. And also like, of course, manifest destiny and that sort of thing. But I'm not at all surprised to see that lead to later on in the book, raw milk.
Yeah.
Am I jumping ahead?
No, can you tell us, before we talk about punk rock kids, can you tell us a little bit about your fascination with unpasteurized milk?
First of all, it was not. I will not. I don't drink. I don't drink milk. Period. Again, we were talking about gastrointestinal issues and stuff. There we go. I got him again.
That's why I thought he was black. He was lactose intolerant.
It's Black Irish. That counts.
Can't wait
He's
for
just
my mom.
For the lighter guys.
But like. I do think like it is wild, like, and why I ended up like talking to people who were like raw milk folks is that it's like, well, what does right wing, or right coded environmentalism look like? And like the weird sort of impulse, like if you see like Maha, right, is like Baja is essentially, a lot of it is just like sort of scrambled, like lefty environmental politics, worries about pesticide. And then it's like, and also don't let the government vaccinate you, don't get a vaccine. And also like raw milk is amazing. And even though we know like there's a reason like pasteurization was invented because, dairy industry is like super dirty and a whole bunch of other things, but like the folks who were involved in the raw milk, like what was interesting to me is like some of them were even like call themselves environmentalists, land stewards, right, which is also an interesting term. We can unpack too more what that means. But the like when you started asking them like, hey, what's the what do you think about climate change or anything? Then it's like globalist conspiracy, hoax, all those sorts of things. They wanted nothing to do with it. But they were also super worried about, glyphosate and like these specific sort of pesticides. And I think one of the things that was interesting is when like I was in Eugene and like talking to people about like, what is the Lane County, like the Eugene County, like the county that Eugene, Oregon is in, what's that farmer's market look like? And they're like, it's wild, right? It's It's raw milk folks, it's militia people, it's hippies, right? Off-grid people, like, and I do think there is this weird thing, like, I hesitate, I hate when people call it like the horseshoe of politics, but there is this weird thing where it's like there are people who are very like suspicious of, you know, the system for a variety of reasons, and sometimes they find themselves in weird places, and I think raw milk is one of those kind of subcultures.
Can I ask a question about that? You talked about the suspicion, and I wondered, you put these interesting details in the book each time of how you were talking to these activists.
Yep.
You talked to some people on Zoom, some people on FaceTime, some people on Signal, which is higher security.
Yep.
But then the raw milk people, you're talking to them like Facebook Messenger, like
no, on the phone, Zoom. I mean,
yeah,
all those things. Yeah, they're like less. I mean, it's a different. They wouldn't consider. I mean, there's one person who like she was entertaining. She called herself a raw milk trafficker. That's what she's telling. Put it in the book. Call me a raw milk trafficker.
If you pay a little more, can you get a little titty milk in there?
Oh, Jason, not yet. We just met him.
That's what
I'm texting. I'm hitting Scott up right now. Scott.
He called me an N-word and then said titty milk on it. As he drinks some of his fucking traffic.
Herbal tea right there.
He took his pinky out to let us know that only the finest hippie woman.
I can't. Oh my gosh. You guys killed me.
But they were not. They didn't seem as suspicious of you. One of them was an influencer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a completely different dynamic with the setup of the interviews with.
For sure.
With them versus the environmental activists.
Yeah, but even among the environmental activists, there were different levels. I mean, there were like people who were, you know, I would say like happy to chat in not happy to chat, but like, you know, were kind of in more mainstream sort of like they were activists but they didn't really like go heavy into the sabotage. But like I will say, like it is true is that to me, and this is something, you know, MToussaint, you got your screen off, so you know like this as well as anybody, is that there is security culture is part and parcel of like, I almost feel like, you know, every sort of like movement or, you know, scene has like signals or other things that like, are you a part of it? And like security culture, that was the thing that really struck me about, you know, activists, especially who came up during the Green Scare and those afterwards, right? In terms of like being very suspicious, like having to be vetted by people. And I get it, you know, I've done field work in other places too. And you know, I was though like surprised, right? When at the level of kind of security culture that people brought to this. But then you read the story about like Craig Rosebrough, the spokesperson for the ELF. And, you know, not only like has he like FOIA'd his files and stuff, but like it also came out that, you know, the book agent who was like, he was going to,
that was crazy.
Yeah, no, when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's insane. This book agent who he thought he was like working with on his memoir. And like, again, I think the key point is that Craig was a spokesperson. He, you know, allegedly wasn't involved in any of the actions, didn't know about it, but the FBI thought differently. So they hire a book agent to essentially be an informant for him. And so like this paranoia, right? It's semi-warranted at least, right?
It was funny when you joked with them that they were more paranoid than, you know, people you had dealt with in other like war-torn countries.
But it's true though. I think it's true to some extent, but I also like, is that a product of the fact that like, hey, the, you know, US government is more capable at surveillance than these other places? I don't know. But like, I do think it's worth saying is that many of the people who like I interviewed who are current activists, right? You know, we can talk about whether we think Antifa is actually a thing, but that's what they would be labeled as by this current administration. Yeah. So like, you know, some of it's like, you know, laughable or like, that's ridiculous. But then like, it kind of, you know, especially like post 2024, it's like a little less so. I don't know.
I mean, some of those people went to prison for
Yeah.
good amounts of time. I mean, not like
Yeah.
Panther sentences, but they definitely went to prison
Yeah.
for long periods of time. I'm not trying to go to prison for letting out some minks. I just would have been just like, really? This is what you're locking me up for? That would have been my defense, which probably wouldn't have played well. But when does the movement take a turn to the more radical? What are some of the bigger cases, and were there any particularly long-term victories? It seems like the only legislation that was passed was designed to crack down on the property destruction and not really advance any of their causes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would put to like sort of local, some of like the redwood like protections, some of like, I mean, I think the things that have been like most successful, right? And I think is something that like inherently, you know, and MToussaint can critique, disagree, or agree, is that like one of the advantages that those folks that the, you know, some of the Earth First folks had, and even some of the ELF, though to a lesser extent, was the sort of place-based campaigns, right? If you're trying to protect a particular parcel of, you know, the country, or stop something from happening, right, in like a specific, you know, geographic area, that's easier. Climate change is like, it's like one of the hardest. I mean, I'm a political scientist by training, and it's like the messaging around this is really tough. It's like, oh, we need to stay below 2.4 or 350 parts per million. And it's like this super nebulous thing. And oh, by the way, guess what? Anything we do now, it won't really matter because everything's baked into the future. But, and also we only control what, like a third of the emissions, the rest are outside the US. So good luck with that, right? Like that's a hard thing to organize around. And I do think, right, some of the, you know, I think one of the things that was interesting to me was, you know, one of the early Earth First guys who was not as, anti-immigration as some of the other people, right? And one of the things that he told me is that they also saw that like some of their tree sit campaigns, they ran surveys and public opinion polls, and they were able to shift public opinion in Oregon kind of against some of the old growth logging. And I think that's maybe like a success that you can talk about. Now, like on climate, I don't know. I mean, that's like the part that's where I come in. Like for my interest is like, I got young kids. I mean, we were in DC. It like a couple summers ago, it looked like Apocalypse Now. It was insane. And now that's our regular. Right. And I don't know, what you guys think, but I mean, watching, there's a lot of bad stuff happening in the world, but I do think like one thing that's wild is like, essentially, right, EPA's gone, any kind of like renewables are gone. We're opening up public lands again. And those are the exact same things, at least the public lands that led to Earth First in the first place. Right. But then also the repression. Kind of you don't see the pushback on the opening of public lands, because I think outside of those immediate areas, which are also kind of sparsely populated, where a lot of those public lands are, the main hubs of population are in the bigger cities in those places. Yeah, but can I push back on your pushback a little bit? Sure. So I do think that's one of the interesting things that did happen was that, like, who was it? Mike Lee from Utah, like, tried to like the senator from Utah tried to put in like, we're going to open up everything and do that. And that was like the one place where I would say, like, if there's any positive thing is like, people are like, absolutely, like, stop doing that. No, like, we're not going to do that. So like the worst possible outcome was kind of averted, but I don't know. That's not something that's like going to get people super excited. I don't know what gets people super excited, because when you say environmentalism, especially in a place like California, where people just assume everybody is drinking raw milk and trafficking breast milk. It's gonna be it's not everybody. It's not everybody. It's just Marin County. It's just Marin County. But most people are like, okay, that's fine. Can I get my G-Wagon? I just want to I just had a kid and I can't keep him in this Prius. I got to get a G-Wagon to fit all their soccer stuff. Yeah. Like, go ahead, sorry. No, you go ahead, please. Yeah, I mean, and this goes to like, I think what M was saying earlier, MT, right? That it's nothing, right? Is the environmental movement like nothing if it like still, right, these other things take precedent? I mean, I think one thing that's interesting is a lot of the activists that I had interviewed, right, and I've kept in touch with them, some I've become friends with, is that, right? Many of them are involved in like the anti-ICE, protests and movements, and that's seen as like way, and I think for good reason. It's seen as like something that's immediate. It's like what's happening with ICE and like kind of having this, people being rounded up, put in camps, and in no due process, and that's like the what they did in Minneapolis. I think that's an interesting like thing, and it goes to like, okay, what does that mean for the climate? Is like if all the climate activists are doing ICE work for the next 3 to 4 years, what does that mean, right? And I mean, I also can't blame them because this is an immediate problem. It's something that like people can have an effect, right? It can prevent, people, families being separated, like kids getting snatched. I think it's it's a totally worthy cause, right?
ICE right now is operating, as we all know, with impunity as far as arresting American citizens. I don't know if you or MT read the news about this woman that arrived at Chicago O'Hare,
yep,
who is an American citizen. She was detained by ICE because they said her travel itinerary looked suspicious.
Yep.
They took her to another state nearby, but still another state.
Yep.
Her family went looking for her, eventually
Yep.
just let her go, because that's the thing that ICE does, right? We've already seen this with a death from
Yep.
an elderly man that was a citizen. They just let people go.
Yep.
But what's frightening to me about this, in this regard, kind of amplifying your point, is that it's an immediate fear of anyone in the movement that is native, meaning a native to America. That didn't sound right.
Sure didn't. Sure didn't.
I mean, they were born.
I want to see where you were coming with.
They're heritage Americans. They're the good kind. They might be a bit on the tan side, but we accept them. Their hair is of a certain grade.
Some, I assume, are good people.
Oh my God.
Well, let me make this point. Let me gather ourselves. I think it's something that I see a lot with environmentalism and talking to people with this and trying to get people out for the cause. In this culture, and probably a lot of Western cultures, or just a lot of cultures, it's one thing to kill somebody like dead in the street. It's another thing to slowly poison their environment until they die. Same with a bear. It was one thing to kill a bear. It's another thing to slowly poison his environment until he dies. It's not okay to kill somebody fast. It is okay to kill somebody slowly. There are many, many, many people who are dying all the time because of their environments, whether it's like chemicals, it's pesticides, it's food deserts, it's this or it's that. I mean, the health problems are enormous.
Yep.
But it doesn't bring people out into the streets the way killing somebody quickly does.
Yeah. Like the EPA, like change in their ruling, right? That will have a big effect. But as you said, it's an indirect one. Right. So we don't see the agency there. Right. And like people are like, oh, it's kind of hidden and, it doesn't really matter. And it's like, I do think, right, the one thing that people do take for granted is like, I mean, like living in like with bad pollution, like it's terrible. Like nobody likes that. Like it's awful. And like when that happens and like we know the people who get affected by this, right? They can, where are all the power plants, the dumps, all those things. We know where those are put. I do want to ask you guys though something, because I do think one thing that has also come up as well, and I'm not a spokesperson for AI by any stretch of the imagination, but there's also like the anti sort of data center movement has also
huge.
That's been something that's been super interesting sort of to see, is that there's this impulse against ICE. And then also this impulse against like AI that's coming, and also the people that are in the anti-data center, on the anti-AI bandwagon. Again, those folks are not necessarily lefty, right? There's a lot of,
Fine.
Yeah, no, it's interesting just to see, because that's, part of it has also been some of the folks that I interviewed has said, like, there's, trying to like work through what are their politics, and their argument is that it's like, are billionaires the problem? And if so, yes, then where do we go?
I think that's the success of Bernie Sanders, that he brings certain conversations to the forefront, and that conversation was billionaires.
Yep.
And he was so effective that Donald Trump actually has a similar argument in his initial run in 2016. It's elites, right? That's what right wingers say. It's these cosmopolitan elites that are the problem. And Bernie Sanders a little more forward and says, no, it's just billionaires.
Yep.
And so I think it's in people's brains right now, because this is kind of this hyper political moment that Anton Yeager always talks about, where we are pretty cognizant of what's going on. And these data centers, people, like you said, that aren't very environmentally aware, they're not like not with the raw milk and the hemp outfit. They probably have SUVs and multiple cars and things like that, but they understand that this is going to be a problem with their water supply. Yep. And that was one of the things that I found out when I worked in a fracking environment in North Dakota. I'm not going to sit here and act like I was very up on the environment. I knew that there was one.
It exists.
I knew it existed, but I didn't care to know about what and I wasn't drilling. I was cooking for people that were doing that. And, someone that was more in tune with the environment kind of pointed to the sins of the ecosystem that we worked in.
Yeah.
Where they're like, look, there's no stars in the sky. We're in the middle of fucking North Dakota, and we can't drink the water here because it's all contaminated. Like, this is problematic.
Yep.
So I think people are kind of waking up to the fact that these things are going to be massive problems for them down the road.
Yeah.
And with an influx of documentaries on Netflix, people know that the runoff from Wilson's leather has destroyed certain parts of India and Bangladesh, where the majority of children are born with these massive birth defects. And that's a reality that they're starting to see at home. And I think that has to do, maybe this is just me being presumptuous, with the fact that the legislative administration that's in power right now is just so mask off with their duplicitous behavior that people are like, if they put a data center here, this is going to be trouble.
Yeah.
Well, can I push back on that?
Sure.
Which this is something that you do approach in your book, this sort of back and forth of two minds thing. Activists are trying to figure out what actually is effective and what's not. Mm-hmm. So you see this pushback on the AI and the data centers, but is that not the pushback that we saw on crypto? And now crypto's normal.
Yeah.
No, I think the pushback on crypto, I'll say this.
Yeah.
Before Thomas answers, I think the pushback on crypto was in certain spaces.
Okay.
I never saw it outside of left spaces. And if you live in left spaces, then, remember, left spaces are the minority of the internet, and it's kind of filled with people that don't like to have fun.
Oh.
So, you don't have fun.
No raw milk jokes. Yeah.
Yeah. Just black soap all over her house. There's no fun scents in that house. There's no bergamot and lime in her house.
I got bergamot. You want bergamot? I got bergamot. What? Soy candles, 55-hour burn time.
Have you ever dated a fucking really earthy person and had a Yankee candle in your house? Or that's just chemicals. I'm like, fuck right off. It makes the farts go away. It's there for a reason.
This whole podcast is raw milk and gas. I'm here for it.
It's our new bio.
I love it. Yeah. Farts. Yes. No. Damn. No, but I think your point. I do think the one difference that I would say too, though, about the AI data centers, though, is that the crypto is like, I do think, like Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, like personalize the enemy kind of thing, is that with AI, it's very kind of clear who those people are. It's like Zuckerberg, it's Bezos, right? It's, Altman, and they have very weird preferences, like publicly, like, and I think there is like this more like, Mark Zuckerberg's going to stick a massive data center near your house, and it's going to sound loud. It may pollute your water. It's going to jack with your energy bills. There are going to be no jobs to come in. It's going to also like feed your like kids slop, right? And so I do think there is something like, and I will say I was, early on, I thought like the AI stuff was kind of ridiculous and like garbage, but like if you talk to people who are computer programmers, it's crazy, right? That industry is changing, and I think it's less of this is like a BS device and more this can have really big effects on the economy, and it's gonna help, as we were saying, the billionaires, right? The politics of this are awful, right? In terms of where the money's going. Right. So the politics of like AI data centers to rally around, I think, are, in some ways a little easier. Right.
So let me ask, we know the people who are in charge, they fall into the uncanny valley in terms of being human. When do we get the guillotines? It's not like they're people. Zuckerberg's not a person. Not like you and me.
Yeah. I mean, I do think like this is the sort of deep question, again, in like political science and, like why did like the anti-establishment impulses lead to plutocratic Trump politics and like MAGA? And it's a really weird sort of thing. And I think, money and politics matter a ton, but I think and I don't have a good, there's not like an easy sort of story other than the fact, like, I do think there's like from, my area, right, is that we are living in, it's not just the US, but across the world, people hate like the incumbent parties all around the world. Yeah. And we had the misfortune, luck, bad luck, whatever you want to say, and also, our history of having somebody like Trump who was basically there when people were like mad and wanted to throw the bumps out. And it's more accidental than that. And then, there are a bunch of, people with a lot of money who saw, we can easily keep making money by putting this person in charge. And that's, I think part of it. Now, the question, as you were saying, is what do people do to organize to prevent this? I don't know. I mean, that's another podcast, right?
So, well, someone in the chat is like, "Hey, are we going to ask the gentleman about sabotage?" So, guillotines are not necessarily sabotage. So, no. Let's talk about sabotage as a tactic.
Yeah. I mean, so I think it runs. I always give the preface for all those who are listening out there. This is a rhetorical title, not an instructional manual, right? But I do think that what is interesting is sort of like in the book that I talk about is that the early sabotage of kind of the Earth First era was this was like we're going to put some sugar in some bulldozers, pull up some survey stakes, right? The big controversial one was tree spiking, like hammering a spike into a tree, not telling, people with the timber company where it was. And so if they milled it, right, it could wreck the saw or hurt the timber worker. I mean, that was different from like the property destruction and kind of arson approach that the ELF had. And I think really since then, right, since then and since like Jessica Resnicek, right, and I think it's Ruby Montoya, right, at the Dakota Access Pipeline, there hasn't really been a ton of sabotage, right? I mean, there's some stuff like with Stop Cop City, and like that's a deeper question is what do we think of with Stop Cop City, like an environmental campaign, sort of, but it was also like a police abolition, campaign with, Black Lives Matters that used forest defense tactics. So I don't know. I mean, I think there hasn't been really sabotage, and I do think it's like kind of like an open question as to why. I have some thoughts in the book, and I think part of it's the repression works, right? People are not gonna Jason joked about he didn't want to do 15 years for releasing mink, but I think that is the sort of calculus that people make, is if I sabotage a pipeline, what am I going to do? 10 years in prison? It's not going to make that much of a difference, right? And so I think part of it is like that kind of calculus. But then I also think it comes back to the sort of subcultures, right? I mean, one of the things that was surprising while doing this was that subcultures, right? This idea that, somebody said, like, one of the guys I interviewed, I was throwing rocks through windows and until I found the punk scene and the zines, and I now knew which windows to throw it to. And there's not something that's like that subculture is no longer exists, for better or for worse.
The punk subculture, or that kind of punk
that kind of punk subculture that intimately ties, right? Forest defense, eco liberation, vegan, straight edge. There's not like a new version of like Earth Crisis coming out, I would say.
No, because to me, all of it becomes a certain kind of branding, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you think about post Cold War, punk rock, and if we want to, I think Mark Fisher is a lot more sentimental in his critiques of Kurt Cobain, but I appreciate that. But if you look at him as a test subject, he's basically something that we hadn't seen before, where you're taking this music that was looked at as like, it's political, but it's not really that musical, and it's not that serious, and these kids are just trouble. Like, if you ever watched any television show from the very early 80s and late 70s, whenever they would portray, not Happy Days, but Chips has some episodes where it's like, but they're a punk kid. it's like a cult. So you look at how it changed in just 10 years from you're a cult on the fringes to you're a teen idol. And you can bake into selling out. We would have called that selling out at the time. Your authentic bona fides. And not to crap on Earth Crisis or Minor Threat or any band that had some serious thing about them from straight
Reich.
Cattle Decapitation is a death metal band that's been around for probably 20 years. That strict stances on veganism, but it just becomes kind of a brand signifier more than it is a movement builder. And I think at that moment where the big bad is gone and you finally have your first baby boomer in office as president. So there really was this idea of political change. So the one thing that you can't attach yourself to that feels like you're really doing something is the environment.
Yeah, but don't you think like my pet theory, like unprovable, is that I think though that punk took, there are tons of foibles, and we can talk all about like issues in the punk scene, but the one positive thing I think on average is it took a lot of angry, alienated kids and gave them, an ethos, right? Mostly white kids, but there were a lot of other, and gave them an ethos and like a politics that was probably better than they would have found otherwise. And now the flip side of that is streamer gaming culture, which is all like right coded and it's terrible. I mean, you see it like, and it's right wing coded, right? It's subversive from the right, and that's like the part where it's like, well, where's as you were saying, the left, we have small spaces and we're not funny, right? Where's the funny side of that?
Well, one thing the right is really good at doing, especially in the manosphere. I was talking to a good friend about this earlier today. And I actually wrote an article about this, and now all these motherfuckers at Jacobin are biting my shit. Oh, there's this guy named Clavicular. Oh, that Jason guy wrote about it, but he doesn't have a big degree. And he didn't pass the paper bag test, so we can't pay attention to him. And I said it on there. I wouldn't eat a dick. Yeah, fuck him. Shout out to Damage Magazine for publishing that. But anyway, there's a community that is involved with the manosphere. So even if you sit here and shit on all these people and Andrew Tate's of this and that, it's like, yeah, But there's a community in my gym. And you know what happens when I lift weights all day? I can see a change in my body. You know what happens when I read a book? Not a goddamn thing.
Yep.
Oh.
Nothing happens. And I'll never read as many books as Thomas Zeitzoff. So because I can't read that many books, he can't lift as many weights as me. And I got dick extensions. See if you can pull these bitches.
What about the bone structure?
We got neck week.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna switch gears a bit.
Thomas takes another switch.
I do. My
Another
herbal tea is getting like it's working overtime.
So Connor asked, did the eco movement have an anarchist bent? And is that incorrect? So can you talk about the anarchist influence, and was it more than just sabotage?
Yeah, I mean, I think there definitely was. I mean, this was like the critique that folks in like the early Earth Firsters who we talked about earlier, this was like their nightmare scenario, was all these like urban anarchist kids, you know, coming into the movement and basically taking this, you know, wilderness ethos that they wanted and like turning it on its head. And I think a lot of it, like, again, comes back to what was happening in the Pacific Northwest. Like, I guess one, you know, way to think about it, and I do think this is true, is that what was happening with the Earth Liberation Front, right, is that in Eugene, and you basically have these like tree sitters who meet up with, you know, with these urban crust anarchist folks, and they also meet some like of the animal rights people, and then there's this weird mix, and they kind of go out and form the Earth Liberation Front. But on the other hand, too, is I think the Earth Liberation Front is also just an extension of the broader sort of anti-globalization movement that was, you know, kind of reached its watermark in Seattle in 1999, and like the anarchist principles were there, leaderless, right? You know, were for the liberation of animals, the earth, and humans, right? That's the idea of total liberation, or, you know, some people, you know, green anarchism, these kinds of two interrelated concepts. So I think it definitely had an effect. Now, like on the climate movement, is there like an anarchist bent? I mean, I think some of the spaces and some of the people who do direct action, right? Anarchism, like, I think is intimately tied in with like people who subscribe to the direct action philosophy, but it's nowhere near, I think, as important as it was during this like time period from like the early 90s to like the early 2000s.
I noticed in your book you didn't talk about the MOVE movement in Philadelphia. Is that because they're black?
Oh.
No, that's a fair. I mean, that's a fair, like, in the sense, like,
they were hardcore back to nature people, and super hated people. They would yell at people that had pets and stuff like that in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I mean, and the Philly police bombed them. I mean, this is like the really famous case. I think, you know, it's a fair point. It's like, no,
I in reading it, I was like, if he has MOVE in here, then he must be half.
Oh. I have a question about that.
Well, I mean, can I ask though, like, about MOVE, because I'm not as familiar with it. Like, I mean, because MOVE also was part of this like vegan, right? I mean, this is part of this like
very early. Yes.
Yeah.
That was part of the problems. There were like malnourished kids in the house, and there was, you know, like there was a lot of issues with that. No one deserves to get a bomb dropped on your home.
Still crazy with that. It's like,
but they were hated by that community.
Yeah,
hated. I'm sorry, TIUSSAINT.
Well, Jason mentioned that, you know, he was looking for certain mentions, and I was looking for certain mentions too. One was Daniel McGowan and the movie If a Tree Falls. One was Deep Green Resistance, which I was very surprised the context in which they turned up. You don't talk about them much. And then also there used to be a blog called Green is the New Red, which I thought would turn up, but didn't. You did talk about the Green Scare, though.
So there's some citations there.
Okay.
But If a Tree Falls is in it.
Yes.
And yes, I mean, we'll just say, like, yeah, I talked to people who were involved in that I would say in the book, I started out like intentionally like, and I thought maybe it was being a little careful, is like just everybody was pseudonymous and everybody in the book is pseudonymous. And I'm glad I did that, because like I went and I talked to somebody from like the Knight Foundation, and one of the wild things is that like Rick Scarce, who wrote like the original book, The Eco Warriors, he's a sociologist at Skidmore, when he was a grad student, like there was like a break-in at Washington State and they thought he had information and they asked him to turn over his field notes. He refused, and he spent like 7 months in prison. So
Damn.
yeah, no, I mean, and I'm not about to be a political prisoner. So like I went through and anonymized all my notes, and I'm glad I did pseudonymous. But like those are, if a tree falls is like, I mean, part of the reason I showed in my class every semester. And like, there's like, I mean, it's not perfect, but I think one of the things it does really well is like basically tell us like, how do people like choose to engage with, higher risk forms of activism, and what happens when like with repression, right? How does that deal with movements? And I think that's like a really, important point. And the deep green resistance stuff, I mean, I know who they are, and yes, I've talked to. Would you consider deep green resistance still like? I mean, it seems like it's like a blueprint for sort of what other people ought to be doing,
Right.
rather than like. I don't think Lier or Derek or those folks. There are people that are affiliated with it who are definitely like involved in different activist causes, and there's a lot of controversies around their stance on like trans issues and other things. But like, I don't know if I would call them like activists as much as like, I mean, I guess maybe in like the Malm sense, but like, I think the Malm, was Malm's book, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, right, for better or for worse. And he has a lot of thoughts on the Earth Liberation Front, but that was a book that like everybody cited. Like either they hated it and called him an armchair asshole, or other people were like, we need more of this, right? That was something. I didn't hear as many people talk about.
I was when I started hitting the part of the book where people were shitting on Mom, who's been on the show quite a bit, someone I would refer to as a homie. I was like, damn, people hate my homie.
I know.
But it's from a right, is that he calls out like, well, all these people, this is what they did wrong, right? Yeah. And so people like are territorial. I do think one thing that is interesting, as you were talking about, is people who like were part of the ELF sort of let's just say milieu, which is a fancy word for saying scene, but like we're part of that. They had like very different views on like how effective they were too. And I do think like that's a question that I would ask to you guys is, do you think they were effective at all? Or?
Look, dude, I don't want to say it out loud what I was yelling as I was reading the book. As I'm reading the fucking book.
We've moved on to the second cup of herbal tea.
I'm reading like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
I was like, get the fuck out of it. That's how it goes down?
Jake Ferguson. No, it's wild, right?
Because of a junkie? A junkie? Get the...
He was a very well trusted and beloved.
A junkie?
Yeah. But I think...
You trust a junkie?
But one thing that was... Yeah, oh, no. But the one... you got me there. But like
come on, man.
But the one thing that was interesting, right, is their actions kind of had stopped before the investigation, right? Yeah. Their stuff died before, and they were like Danny had gone, McGowan had gone kind of quiet, hadn't really been involved. The scene had sort of broken up before then. After I think people got scared post 9/11, being called terrorists, etc. And like it. So like it wasn't that like Ferguson caught them in the act. It was like a couple years after a lot of this stuff that he got them like on wearing the wire and the tape recordings. Yeah.
It's the scene in Carlito's Way where Vito Morganson is Lale, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like, come on, man. Shitbag. I can't fuck.
Well, anyway.
But you watch these movies like this is think about this, people. You watch a movie like Carlito's Way, and he's supposed to have this like clairvoyance, this sixth sense that I can smell. There's something amiss with my old friend, and it's like, oh, fuck right off, Carlito's Way. That's not how the real world works.
Yeah.
That dude goes in there, wears a wire. He's like, "Hey, remember when you lit those buildings on fire? You got any matches? Can you say it into my collar again when you lit those buildings on fire?"
Oh my God.
I wanted to say to your earlier point about deep green resistance. I'll say this. Firstly,
Yeah.
I read the book. I enjoyed it very much, at least the first half. And then I realized, well, I don't know why I realized it, but I picked up some clues. I felt like the book was written for white people. And there was sort of an implicit black people stand down, indigenous people stand down. This book is for white people, and they're the ones who should be taking these risks. You put them in the front. And I was like, oh. And I never finished the book. But I will say this.
You were like, "Fuck this guy. Fuck this globalist." You turned into Candace Owens.
I did very much like the beginning of the book.
And you just threw the book down.
To hell with this. This is not
Hell
for me.
this
I'm the main
globalist. He
character.
killed Charlie Kirk.
It gets better. You missed the last. No, I'm kidding.
I should finish it.
Yeah.
I finished your book. But Derek, you'd mentioned that they were not activists and they sort of came off as armchair activists in the book, because the book is about telling you how to set up a movement. Interestingly enough, an underground movement. They tell you how to manage your above ground and your underground.
Yeah.
You said they weren't activists, but Derek said his mother was diagnosed with cancer and he told her to kill some CEOs if she was going to die. That could be activism.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but Derek was also, I mean, Derek was like, I think Derek in the Pacific Northwest scene, that's the kind of interesting thing, right? Is in the 90s, right? A language other than words, and like John Zerzan, right? Those are the people who like philosophically were like guiding the movement. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, there are people that subscribe to deep green resistance, but I wouldn't say it's like in folks who are in the mainstream of a radical movement. But I wouldn't say they're like definitely like seen as like a guiding light behind where the movement like is going. I think they have like, here's our ideal scenario where we kind of want to go. Now, the last part that you said about like what this book is about and written for white people, I mean, I guess that might be academia. No, I'm kidding. But like, I do think, I come from this from like an outsider's perspective. And I do think like the question, like, and I know you said Malm's a friend of the show, and, that is like the question that he raises, I think, is like a big puzzle, right? Because climate, for my next book, I've been interviewing a bunch of climate scientists, and, this shit's coming, right? And it's like kind of wild that we're just going to like let it wash over us, right? And I don't think that, and I don't think that's, I don't think that's like what will actually fully happen. I think there'll be a lot of other stuff that'll happen too. But I think the other part of me as a political scientist, it would say there are a lot of aggrieved people in the world, right? There are a lot of pissed off people. I mean, you drive through any like major city during rush hour, right? And you will see people pissed off at the world. But there needs to be some kind of subculture, some kind of scene that nurtures them and an opportunity. And I think that, there was that subculture sort of scene in the Pacific Northwest. It was pretty white in a lot of ways, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what that looks like going forward, right? I think that's also why people were like, so, I mean, you guys saw How to Blow Up a Pipeline, the film version? Like,
never seen it.
No.
It's interesting, but I think like there were a lot of activists that saw it, I knew, and they were like excited about it. They were like screenings for it. And part of that was because it was like something that folks wished could like happen, right? But yet like it's only in like fictional representations, right? The Ministry of the Future is another book that people talked about, a sci-fi book that's like starts with like the worst, most harrowing sort of example of a heat wave in India, like a heat dome in India that kills a bunch of people, and then like an eco-terrorist group like gets founded, right? So these folks, I think like activists are like looking for anything that they can say like, hey, here's where we go. And I do think, right, I don't know what the subculture scene or what the, what the opportunity will be that like sparks people. But I do think at some point, right, I don't think we're gonna like just not, I don't think people are not going to do anything. And that's also why I also worry about the right, is that, again, there is a right-wing climate argument that is out there, and it's like on the internet, and it's like in these really awful spaces, but it's coherent, right? And, you know, at some point I think that will come to pass too.
Wherever you guys are watching or listening to the show, there is a link in the description to get Thomas's book, No Option But Sabotage. Toussaint, do you have something you want to add?
You can read half of it too if you want.
No.
Damn.
No. I read the whole thing. I read it in 2 days. I was very, very excited to read it. And thank you for writing this book for me. I appreciate it.
I thought you said you wrote it for white people. What is it? Oh, you're lying. Mask off moment.
No.
Takes off the black face.
No.
Scooby-Doo. You just Scooby-Dooed yourself.
No. DGR was for white people.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
This book is for everyone because we have it now in 2026, and that is where things are going, which you also include in the book. So as much as people revere Mom, and I know that he's a friend of the show, I have heard criticisms of him for not defending the Sami people. And I think that's where the movement is going. It's sort of the project that I was working on with my work, making the movement more inclusive.
Yep.
I think some people are working towards that as a goal, but I don't think it should be the goal.
Making the movement more inclusive?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
they should go recruit black people?
Well, everyone is a stakeholder. Everyone has a piece of this. And part of the reason why I think so much of the initiatives that environmentalists get into fail is because it seems like the people who are working on this are environmentalists when it should be everyone.
Yeah.
But they're the ones who are like tasked with this responsibility, and everyone breathes. I guess. You know, we share this planet, and like, okay, the minks aren't going to do it themselves. It's got to be us. They're not the ones who put themselves in the cages either. So,
I want to address the super chat. Nebraska had its third warmest winter on record. Only the worst years of the Dust Bowl were worse. I might not be interested in climate change, but it is interested in me, apparently. Thank you, Prairie. That is very dark.
Prairie also, is that farmer. Just so
he's a real life farmer.
Yep.
Also, Zahir wants to know, was Earth First adjacent to the AIM movement in the Pacific Northwest when they started?
The American Indian movement?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, there's crossover in terms of like, you know, I will tell you that the Earth First original folks will get really mad if you like categorize them as sort of part of the new left, right? With Black Panther Party, right? American Indian movement, like they'll be like, whoa, like, excuse me, we're conservationists, like hold it here. But I also want to go to MToussaint's point, your point about like why they don't work. I think the ones that did, the environmental stuff that did work is conservation, because it's like, oh, we're going to set aside this pretty land and everybody loves that, right? And we get rich people to like do that. And that like, that's the, I would argue, like the lowest hanging fruit, right? Of kind of environmental policy. And that's not really, you know, that's not addressing, as you're saying, root causes and other sorts of things.
Can I answer a question?
Sure.
So there's a question in the chat. Nuri Yank asks, what does writing, the chat just moved really quick. What does writing something for white people look like? Seems like a nonsense thing to say. Well, from what I remember when I first read the book Deep Green Resistance, I was very into it for a long time. They talked about different stories from people all over the world. They talk about Ireland as well and resistance there and different resistance movements. Mm-hmm. But I got the impression that the book was written for white people because it is a how-to book of how to set up your movement, your group. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was one of those things where, you know, now when people do protests, they don't want the black people in the front. They put the white people in the front because it's like a privilege thing, and it's like, oh, you're already oppressed, so we don't want you to be the person to go
Sounds
to
like
jail.
kindergartners.
That would be more detrimental to you than it would be to me, a white person who ostensibly has no rap sheet. It was that sort of impression that I got from the
Yeah.
book, and something about it kind of made me feel like I didn't need to read it anymore. I might finish it.
Did we read it or did we not? No, I'm kidding.
I read half.
The other half was like, and for black people with
No.
trainable hair.
Yeah.
I probably think it's to the black people part. Maybe that's it.
Well, I was going to say, because I talk about Stop Cop City, because I do think it's one of the interesting sort of things that happen.
It is interesting.
And I talk to both black activists, but also like the forest tree sitters. And I do think the view of like those anarchists that came in was interesting, right? From, a black environmental, perspective within Atlanta, is that they're like, I love that they're willing to like put their body on the line, these white anarchist kids whose politics are not my politics. But on the flip side, they're also bringing a lot of heat on us, but also like they're, standing up for us, but also, now
They be breaking windows.
What?
They be breaking windows.
Yeah. And they're also like, now they're like, in the irony, I think that, this black activist who I interviewed, she said, well, the irony was that they were called outside agitator. There was white people coming, like it's like the similar kinds of sort of vibes, from the civil rights stories. But I don't know. I mean, I think the thing that will be interesting, coming out of this, movement or whatever this time period is, how people choose to deal with the current political moment, right, in the US, like what's coming down the pipe. And this is something that a lot of activists are like thinking about, is like, how do we have a climate movement like in the authoritarian movement, like in an authoritarian moment? And like the people that I've talked to has basically said, like, look, we can't have a climate movement or environmental movement if we if we live in full-blown fascism or in an authoritarian state. And so we got to do both, right? And if that's intersectional or how that looks, and right now that looks like, trying to prevent ICE from, rounding up people in the streets, that's what it is.
Again, wherever you're watching or listening to the show, his name is Thomas Zeitzoff. The book is No Option But Sabotage. There's a link in the description. Before we even get to the description of the show, there's a link to his book. Thomas, what are you working on next?
So I'm working on a new book on the politics of the future, how we imagine and think about the future. And I've been interviewing a bunch of climate scientists, some climate activists. I've also been interviewing a bunch of folks in the AI space, which has been interesting, like AI, people who think that the robots are going to come and take us over, everything, versus those who think like we're going to all have zero work week. And then the really interesting other folks, which is interesting, and I'll use that in quotes, have been the pronatalists, right? And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the pronatalists.
I did a whole show with a feminist, she's a family abolitionist who has a family out of Sweden, who we did a whole show on natalism.
Yeah, it's a lot of that we're going to colonize the stars. That's some of those folks think. So that's been interesting. But I will say the climate scientists, it's a cheery bunch.
Can I ask one last question?
Of course.
When you were interviewing all of these environmental activists and animal rights activists, you were sitting down with some of these people in person. A lot of them are vegans, if not vegetarians. When you were with them, were you eating something with a face? And how did they respond to that?
No, I had my herbal tea. You know me, I'm MToussaint. No, it's a fair point. I will say, like, the one thing that was interesting is like having, like, because I didn't set out to interview animal rights activists, right? That wasn't what I was going to do, but like they were so intertwined during this period with the eco folks, and there were like the tensions between, right, like, we did a bunch of stuff with animal rights activists, some hunt sabotages or something like that, but then like the Earth First people wanted burgers and the animal rights people were like, what are you guys doing? Like, come on. I do think that's interesting. I also think one of the criticisms that was interesting talking to, folks from the sort of like animal, the Shack, the Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty, which was super active and doxing a bunch of people involved in like life sciences research with animals. And they were pretty effective. That they like sort of decried what animal rights activism, or one part of it, that there isn't as much sort of animal liberation as they would want, and it's more become like the politics of like, veganism, right? Are you a vegan or are you not? And that's kind of the litmus test. And I think, the same argument people could make about, the environmental movement, in the sense that, right, oh, what's your green footprint, right? All these other things where it's like something where it becomes like something that you can control personally, when we really know that like that's negligible. It's the system.
I kind of want to ask you, I feel like I'd be doing the show a disservice if I don't ask you about it. You're like, yes, you have been.
Wait,
it's just like you've been doing a disservice since you got on air 7 years ago. You are a disservice.
No. I feel, I feel great.
So they didn't sway you. They didn't like,
No.
Get you eat some salads. No.
No. The smell of must and patchouli was just enough. One more person with crystal deodorant fucking raised their arms.
I like crystal deodorant.
I bet you do. Yeah.
Oh
Plant's dying every time she listens to a church song.
If your diet is on point, if your diet is on point, you won't smell bad.
TIR, that shit don't work. That shit does not work.
Oh my God. It just allows you to sweat, but you don't smell bad, especially if your diet
That is what funky ass activists say.
Get the fluoride out the water.
Coffee ass breath with hot armpits. You got the whole set, don't you?
This podcast needs to be renamed Bodily Habits, because that's where we're going.
I do have to tell you in the champagne room, TIUSSAINT, about an accident that I recently had with deodorant.
I don't know what that means. Okay.
Before we go.
A lot of deodorant is natural now.
Yes,
no aluminum.
I do want to ask you about poor Thomas. He's going to tell us why.
It's that patchouli stank. It just came right in through here.
He's like, "Oh, you've been eating onions like apples? What's the fuck is going on with you?"
This whole thing, you're going to just gift. The whole thing is just going to be me like cracking up. But go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
The Bill McKibben 350.org conversation is interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's people that appreciate it.
Yeah.
And there's people that think they're siphoning off the important parts of the movement. Can you give us a little bit about the conversation that's had in these spaces about organizations like Bill McKibben's 350.org?
So I do think this is like a big, issue that people recognize, like, in the movement, and TIUSSAINT can, she probably has her own thoughts on this, but is that many of the people like who are even like radical activists or other things, it's almost like, not their Batman or something or Superman, but they have like a day job, right? And a lot of them will work at these climate NGOs and or other things, and then they'll maybe do activism on the side, or even some of these groups, right, will maybe they'll get some money or funding through sort of more mainstream climate groups. And the question is, right, and that people have said is that, like, I had an activist like ask me for like academic papers showing a radical flank effect, which was like, hey, if we do something radical, right, will it like look bad on the mainstream movement? And they asked me to send this paper that was like published in like one of the major journals that showed, like, in the UK that there was this radical flank effect where radical groups blocked highways and did other sorts of stuff, and it didn't harm like people's impression of mainstream groups. It actually made like kind of pushed the Overton window and made them look more acceptable. And this person like asked me like, hey, can you send me this paper because I need to talk to my like NGO bosses to make them like that they're okay if we do like home demonstrations or something, that this won't like blow up in our face. And so I think there is this idea that they're like both like necessary, and that that Bill McKibben has done a lot of organizing and made climate visibility like super visible as an issue, especially for younger folks, and that probably we don't have Fridays for the Future or other youth climate movements without it. But does it like put constraints on like the acceptable like kinds of both discourse and tactics that activists are willing to use? And so there's like this like, well, yeah, they give us money and other things, but they also like this money comes with handcuffs, like as they would activists would call like the NGO industrial complex, right? And that I think is something that's interesting to think about.
The big green suck.
Whoa.
That's
TIR coming in hot.
Whoa.
They do.
Yeah.
I like Bill McKibben, but I agree there with a radio show host, controversial radio show host, Gary Null.
Yeah.
He said that he went to a protest where 350.org was there. And he said, I saw a bunch of very nice people with some very nice signs. But I got the impression these people have no idea what's going on. And he
Damn.
said that he felt it had to do with people not, or I guess like liberals, not accepting the idea that evil exists in the world.
Yep.
And so you see it in a lot of these movies. The bad guy is a guy who has a point. It's just they don't believe you can really be bad. You just have disagreement.
Yep.
And so he's like, there's something here that these people don't get.
Yeah. But do you think that like my view in like this is that this has changed post 2024? And I do think there is like, because some of the things that I like when you see like mainstream politicians saying like 3 years ago they never would have said like abolish ICE, like that's like a mainstream position now. I do think there is a kind of mask off moment within like American politics right now, given everything that's going on. And I do wonder if like some of the like, because the people like Bill McKibben, right, and the NGO big greens that we worry about, right, they're getting they're part of the national security presidential memorandum, right? They're part of the shadowy complex, right? That is this left-wing organized conspiracy theory, which is ridiculous, right? But is also the guiding national security strategy. I mean, they're doing door knocks on Extinction Rebellion. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think things changed with Stop Cop City, Luigi Mangione, and the Epstein list.
The Epstein stuff is wild. Yeah.
It is wild. I think people really don't like that these folks are going to get away with everything. Like, there's going to be zero punishment.
Someone's going to get punished.
Yeah. Well, Prince Albert, right?
right, that guy, one guy.
So, someone's going to get punished. Don't know who, but someone's going to get punished. And it'll be a name that you never heard before. It'll be like Troy Lampkin. Billionaire investor, crypto millionaire Troy Lampkin is going to jail for a gabillion years.
Yeah.
They haven't done it yet, which that is what you're supposed to do. And I don't know. People are like, oh, get the guillotines. What else are we going to do? Some people.
Troy Lampkin's going down.
No, but I do think the Luigi Mangione point is interesting, because that was one thing where like people in the, a lot of the activist folks who I like talked to said like, this was something where they were like, this is an event where there was like sympathy that they felt from even like normal Americans, regardless of what you think of Mangione, right? Is people don't like healthcare companies, and I'm not here to debate like ethics and morals of this, but like they were like, okay, this is something where where we're choosing to target certain individuals that are doing the bad thing, and maybe that's where we need to go is and this is what I talk about in the book, is that like figuring out ways to sort of personalize who these problem folks are. And I think that's also part of why the AI thing is attractive to people. It's billionaires, it's data centers. And again, these people, I mean, you see, like, I mean, if I have to watch Mark Zuckerberg do MMA again, like, right.
It's like watching that McDonald's CEO eat that new burger. Yeah. Weird.
Yeah.
He took a regular size bite. Rich people.
No, he took a bite like he's vegan too. That's the bite.
When you're rich, that's how you bite regular people food.
He called it a product.
The thing is, he had to pick it up with his hands. He's used to
other people do it.
Yeah, like putting it in his mouth for him, like making him chew it, you know.
In his jaw.
Yeah, when you're the CEO of McDonald's, you think you actually touch stuff? No, not at all. Not at all. Again, wherever you're watching the show or listening later, his name is Thomas Zeitzoff. The views of this show do not reflect his personal views. Just know
I'm an academic.
He does not believe in anything that we believe in, and that's okay. That's good. That's why you should buy the book, because he's not going to yell at other people for wearing hemp like I will. Thomas, thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your book, because I do think it gives us a lot to think about.
Thank you guys for having me.
Especially, you brought up something really important about state repression, and I think we can't forget. Sometimes people look so far back to COINTELPRO that they don't think about this movement that really affected no people, but affected property that kind of only dealt with a certain stratum of people too. You burn down a ski resort. Who is that really affecting other than a small minority of people? And these people served real time. There was government task force designed to capture them. So we really have to be cognizant of state repression in these times. So again, Thomas, thank you for taking the time to hang out with us, and have a very good rest of your evening.
It was great, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
His name is Thomas Zeitzoff. Wherever you're watching or listening to the show, there's a link in the description to his latest book, No Option But Sabotage, the Radical Environmental Movement. TIUSSAINT and I are going to go into the champagne room for just a bit, because I have to get up early in the morning to have another What Fresh Hell with Deep State Cuba, where we're going to discuss the geopolitical goings on in this growing global war. But TIUSSAINT and I will take some time to talk with you guys about something that's been on TIUSSAINT's mind, and that is the assassination attempt of Rihanna.
Of what?
We coming for you, nigga.
That's what that lady said to Rihanna.
I didn't hear about that.
You didn't? Oh, well, then, buckle up, Buttercup.
Okay.
Get your fucking bowl of ethically grown M&Ms ready for a fantastic voyage. And on that note, we are
out.
Yeah.